Hi, my name's Eli. City of Santa Fe, you have been lied to. You have been told that your celebrations and traditions are racist. You have been told that your history is based on genocide and is something to be ashamed of. We have recently been told a false history, and a lot of people have believed it. To make matters worse, our elected and appointed city officials have largely gone along and even encouraged this. Earlier today, I had an opportunity to sit down with a local historian, and I'm hoping the discussion I had with him will help to illuminate the truth and dispel the lies so that you can see clearly and understand what is happening concerning the Entrada, the fiesta, and our history in general.
Yes.
So today I'm here with Richard Polese. Am I saying that correctly?
Yes, that's right. Yes.
Okay.
That's right.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, like many New Mexicans, I came to the land of entrapment, we often call it.
We do.
For those of us who found ourselves falling in love with the environment here, the people here, and so on. And I've lived in Santa Fe now for over 50 years.
What do you do professionally?
I am currently a book publisher, and I've been a book publisher for a good number of years here now. I publish nonfiction book, primarily nonfiction books, including travel guides and history, including some interesting New Mexico, New Mexico historical work, particularly about Chaco Canyon, of course, which is so important to all of us here in New Mexico.
Tell us a little bit about just some of the things that you've done in addition. Some of the people you've worked with. I know you work with one of the museums here.
I was editor at the Museum of New Mexico Press many years ago, and then later I became editor of El Palacio for about 4 years, which of course is the magazine of the Museum of New Mexico. And El Palacio is the oldest magazine publication in the West.
Well, very cool. So the reason why we're here is because they've done away with the Entrada this year. I am not a historian like you are. I'm just a mechanic, but I've lived here for my whole life, as my father and his before him, and I think that our culture and our traditions are special.
Yes.
And I am very, very sad to see this go. And when I looked into why this was happening, I found that it seemed like a lot of this was based on a telling of history that is not accurate. I'll just say it that way. And so I wanted to bring you in here today to just kind of maybe just start by telling us a little bit about your specialty here, which is that era and what happened and who de Vargas was and what happened at the Entrada.
And let's also go back to the Pope and the Pueblo Revolt.
Let's go.
Okay. Well, this was the first American Revolution, and it happened in 1680, and it was apparently led by Taos Pueblo, Pope. But the Spanish decided that yes, though we've been kicked out, and it was the murder of all the priests and so on at the Pueblos.
But there's a lot of people that feel that that when Don Diego came back, it was somehow genocide. It was somehow not a peaceful reentry. It was somehow genocide. How do you, as an expert on history, respond to that?
That's totally inaccurate. It's totally, it goes beyond misrepresenting what actually occurred at that time.
Okay. So what did happen?
De Vargas's intention was to, of course, return Spanish presence as one of the conquistadors of throughout much of North America. But his intention was different than the original Spanish presence, which began in 1595, 1598, okay?
Okay, well, that's going way back.
Yes, but the behavior of the Spanish that originally came to this area towards the Pueblo people was not very well informed and led to the Pueblo revolt.
I remember reading in your piece that you did that was recently in the New Mexican that de Vargas came back with an adjusted attitude.
Yes.
And I think you're comparing that to when the Spanish came in the 1500s.
Yes.
Right, and I do think that there's a lot of confusion, and I think that a lot of the things that had happened before de Vargas and in the 1500s, I think that de Vargas kind of gets nailed for some things there.
That were before his
That were
time.
before his time.
Before his time,
right.
yes.
So when he came in, he wasn't looking to commit genocide.
Not at all. Not at all.
He was trying to come in as a peacemaker, correct?
He wanted there to be a good relations between the Spanish that came with him and with the, particularly the Pueblo people here in New Mexico. Yes,
Yeah.
this was the totality of his intention. He wanted things to be different so that there would not be another revolt again, and of course there wasn't.
Yeah.
Until a couple of weeks ago.
Thank you for that. I feel the same way. So what were some of the things that he did to approach Native American people differently? What were some of the things that he did to change his approach as opposed to what had come the century before him?
These are really significant, and I think they're significant not only in the history of our region, but perhaps the entire Western Hemisphere in terms of colonial empires coming in. Because de Vargas perhaps was one of the first of the conquistadors to recognize that you had to respect certain very important aspects of native life, and that he did.
I've also read, and I'd love to know, how accurate this is, but I've also read that Don Diego de Vargas was a protector of some tribes at some certain points in time, and that what he was trying to do was establish a peace and order, and that there were times that he protected them.
Plains peoples, primarily what we call the Apaches today and the Comanches. Historians and anthropologists call them the Athabascan peoples, the latecomers to this region. And they had an interesting advantage after the Spanish left in terms of their attempts to have dominance over the Pueblo people. Mm. And that was, I believe, the introduction of horses. Of course, there were no horses in this hemisphere until the Spanish brought them.
My mom told me that when I was a kid, and I was like, huh?
Militarily, they were invaders as well. So many of the Pueblos were, of course, quite relieved when the Spanish returned and made the promise that you will be protected against these invading tribes. And this, of course, was part of what was in de Vargas's intention and heart.
So to a lot of people who have the misunderstanding that he just came and brought a bunch of death and forced people to do stuff.
It's a bit over the top, for sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure that there were incidents, because humans are humans,
right.
But this was not part of the intention and the continuing practice of Spanish towards the Pueblo since that time, since de Vargas brought this fresh thought about, hey, we're going to all live together, right. Let's respect each other.
Right.
I'd like to get back to this word you just mentioned, the G word, the genocide.
Let's go.
Okay. I was at the meeting at the Santa Fe Public Schools. By the way, I've served on the school board myself.
Okay, and I'm glad you're getting to this because I was going to ask you some of these questions.
So here was the Santa Fe Public Schools board considering whether to allow the presence of fiesta principles in public schools, which of course is part of our history.
Right.
The promulgators, I guess you could say, of the anti-Entrada, who were primarily Jennifer Marley. And she's, I believe, from San Ildefonso, and Elena Ortiz, Jessica Montoya is also part of that. Mm-hmm. They were there, and they shouted the word genocide, and then soon after that, they left. Overwhelmingly, the majority of people there who spoke were strongly in favor of the Entrada. And of course, a great number of them, of course, were Hispanic. And part of our our beings here is Spanish. And of course the city of Santa Fe was created by the Spanish.
Right.
So the vote was a great disappointment to me, because I think it was 4-1 or 5-1 to go along with the radicals. But it was so interesting how here were these two women shouting genocide, which of course had nothing to do with the Entrada at all. In fact, it's,
Right.
the opposite in a sense. But then they left. It's like they were not willing to hear the other side. And unfortunately, apparently, the school board members weren't either. This is one thing that really concerns me about the current episode of groups like the Fiesta Council and the City Council passing resolutions. Is it seems none of them, including the newspapers, including the New Mexican, have not done any work in studying the actual history of that time.
Since there's nobody in our government who seems to be standing up for what is true,
Nobody in our government or in the press.
Right, or our heritage, I guess I would have to say that it falls on a group of my friends and I to do it. And that's why we care about history. And that's why I've taken a day off work to come and talk to you, and why you've taken time out of your schedule to come talk so that we can share this with the community directly.
Yes.
Because history matters. Heritage matters. Our values and where we come from matter. And when we see people looking back in history and seeing some good things that happened and calling it genocide and walking out of the room, man, I just can't not say something.
And of course, you know that I feel that way.
So you mentioned the Red Nation just a few minutes ago. And I'd like to ask you just a few questions about that, because the Red Nation is very, very vocal about, they're celebrating, the fact that the Entrada is gone, and they are very, very vocal about moving on from there. So when they say that they are fighting for decolonization, what do you think that means? Because a lot of people see that and they're not sure what that means, but what do you think they mean by removing all decolonization?
Well, let's remember where Red Nation really got underway.
Okay.
And that was with the pipeline up there in, in the...
Right. the one that was going to Canada.
North Dakota, whatever.
Yeah.
So they were not, of course, they had not a connection with the people here until they were brought in by, as I said, there's 2 or 3 women from Pelosi who brought them down. Because, well, one thing true about Red Nation is, where were they going to go after they lost that fight on the pipeline? Okay. So they decided, okay, we'll come down here. And yet with no real understanding of the history of people here.
Okay.
Just believing what they were being told. And once again, I thought, okay, it was Native people from the northeast like that, the Athabascans who came here, and were the people who started beating up on the Pueblo people. So there's an irony there.
Yeah. Talking to some people online, there's a lot of people feel that the Red Nation is using the Native American people here in New Mexico for their purpose, to create problems, and when they're done, we're all going to be worse off, all of us.
Well, what does Red Nation hope to gain? What do they want?
Decolonization.
Throw people out or something like that?
Well, I mean, if you look at it literally, yeah. I mean, decolonization is basically them saying, let's go back to the way it was in the 1300s, because that's the way it was, and that's fair.
Well, wait a minute. How about the Clovis people? They were there before.
Thank you. Yeah, no, that's true.
Before our Puebloans were.
Yeah. How far back do you go
before
you call something fair? Yeah. Because we've been doing this for hundreds of years, and if this isn't good enough for them, then I guess whatever.
And of course, many of us have heritage that includes Hispanic and Native and Gringo.
Yeah, that's me.
Yeah,
you just described me. What would you say, Richard? What would you say to people who say, there's a lot of people who are upset about the Entrada. Let's just give that to them, and let's just move on as one people with peace from here.
That sounds pretty, but there's something else, of course, going on, and that is racism. Racism against the Hispanic people. And I think that's part of it. And I don't think it's uniform throughout the Pueblos. But I think that's part of what Red Nation and the you activists there at the table, you know, 2 or 3 of the table Pueblos.
The people that have a problem with law Entrada, that same problem exists in everything else around us. And so why would they stop?
Well, let's go back a little bit, like say 3 years ago.
Okay.
Was there a vocal objection to Entrada 3 years ago? No. Or 4 years ago? No, there wasn't. This is very, very recent. And we had Pueblos participating happily in fiestas for generations before that. Well, certainly as long as I've been here, 50 years I've lived here.
Yeah.
So this is not something that's an ongoing gripe. This is really recent. And of course, fiesta was enjoyed by everybody, and by visitors, by people of different religions. Everybody enjoyed fiesta and appreciated it. And I hope that those days will return. And I hope that they'll return with the Entrada. The Entrada. The integrity of the Entrada.
You have such a fondness for Pueblo people, for Native American people. That is so cool. And you have an equal fondness for the Spanish and what that represents here too. I think that we've pretty much established that that the history of Spanish and Native American people has been messy and it's been rough. Especially 1500s were bad. I think that you've also established that...
Yeah, there was good reason for the Pueblo Revolt.
Right.
Yeah, I agree.
Great. And I think that we've also established that from a historical perspective, the Entrada was a peaceful event with peace as the intent.
Yes.
And peace as the result for the overwhelming most part.
Yes.
I think that we've established that this has been accepted generally for hundreds of years, and that the fiestas and the Entrada have been celebrated and even loved for generations. And recently, there are voices that have come up that for their own reasons have a problem with it, and many are spinning a perverted view of history.
But fiesta has lost an important part of its very soul. May the Entrada return someday. It doesn't have to be changed much from what it was 3 years ago. As you have said, and I've recognized too, having been to fiestas just about every year that I've lived here in New Mexico, that the participation, the willing participation, the respected participation of all cultures is such an essential part of who we are.
What is your opinion of the city officials that have allowed this to happen? Okay, so I'm talking about the present mayor, the past mayor too, but the present mayor, the city of Santa Fe, the council, you know, of our city, the Fiesta Council, the school board, just in general. What is your opinion about them coming to this kind of decision?
I think that they have been spineless. They think that they're doing something that's right and courageous, but I think that they really have not taken it into their hearts about the meaning of the Entrada to so many people here. I think that there's been a lack of courage on the part of many of those voting members. Could even be perhaps some of the members of Caballeros de Vargas. They should study history too.
Okay.
Well, I think most of them do know the fact, but I think that they can be a little more assertive about, hey, this is not right and this is not fair, and we are losing part of our heart as Santa Feans.
All right. Well, Richard, I appreciate you coming, and I appreciate you.
Shall I go on and on?
Talking to us. You're more than welcome to.
Of course, there'll be something I think of. Oh, yes, this is what.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you'll be driving away, and I'll be here, and we'll both be thinking of things that we should have brought up.